Brett Stuart, if you can come up, that'd be great. Brett is a founding partner of Global AgriTrends. He's a former lead economist with the U.S. Meat Export Federation, where he conducted numerous research and analysis projects in the global meat trade and advised U.S. trade officials on international meat access issues. So, hey, they're our biggest trading partners. This is a good guy to have here. His experience in marketing and economics will inspire producers to capitalize on emerging markets. So without any further ado, I'd like Brett to give us his insights. Thanks. Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's great to be here with you today. As I said, our firm does a lot of analysis in the global markets. We analyze beef, pork, and poultry around the world, dairy as well. And as much as I enjoy that, I grew up ranching. Grew up on a cattle ranch. We ran cows in northern Utah and western Wyoming, grazed public land, fought the fights associated with that, and it was tough. It's a valley not unlike the Nicola Valley here. It was a long ways from the cattle feeding world and a lot of small producers. But it's good to be here with you today. I actually lived in BC for a couple of years, about 20 years ago. And I'm not anti-trade. My wife's Canadian. I imported one of your great Canadians. So she told me to be on good behavior up here. She's home up to her neck in kid stuff, and I talked to her last night, and I think she's a little bitter that I got to come and she didn't. So maybe next time I'll have to bring her. She's from Castlegar, born and raised in Castlegar. But appreciate the opportunity to be here. I know there's a lot of trade friction. I know the MCOL thing is hopefully coming to an end. I would just tell this group from the U.S. perspective, and I talk to a lot of U.S. cattle producers, I would say probably 90% of U.S. cattle producers opposed COOL every step of the way. And unfortunately, we have a government that loves the vocal minority. And this is just a very clear example of how much a vocal minority can get done. It's been going on for years. It's hindered you, it's hindered us. Hopefully we're nearing the end. I know Congress, we've got their attention. It takes a lot to get Congress's attention, but we've got it. Senate voted last night on the TPA to work towards the Trans-Pacific talks. Hopefully we're getting that done and can get moving forward on that front, but hopefully MCOOL is nearing an end. Well, what I'd like to talk about today, as I talked to Haley about this a month or so ago, I can tell you, she's very passionate about your industry and about the future. And the BCCA group here, what a great group. I mean, this is a good discussion to have, to talk about what does this really mean? I know you're a small group up here in BC. There are challenges, but there are a lot of big things going on. One thing I noticed as I sat here is there's a lot of gray hair in this room, and some with no hair. And I'm not picking on anybody because I'm kind of working that direction as well. But it's important to get the younger generation involved. Get your kids out to these meetings. Bring them with you. If you have to stay home and feed cows while they come, you may have to do that. But boy, get the younger generation involved. They're going to be the ones that deal with and hopefully solve the problems we're talking about today is going to be the younger generation. So what I've got today, I just wanted to talk about the global opportunity and just paint a brief picture of why to be optimistic in this industry, and then talk a little bit about BC beef and what the opportunities are in the future. So globally, I mentioned I look at global analysis. I was in Japan and Korea last week, going through the markets, meeting with importers and talking about it. My business partner, he's overseas all the time, the poor guy. Thankfully, it's him and not me, but he travels extensively as well, trying to keep tabs on this market. And I'm here to tell you, as a kid that grew up on a ranch, boy, the markets are incredible. It's absolutely amazing what's going on in the global markets today. That being said, global markets are complex and they're very diverse, and I don't need to tell you guys that. I mean, you're 70% dependent on exports. You've lived through BSE, you've seen the pain, and there's always that pressure that says, oh boy, maybe we shouldn't trade, maybe we should just hunker down and provide for ourselves and let the world go on its merry way. And I'll tell you, that's the wrong approach for a number of reasons. We've seen countries try to do that, and they've ended up in in agriculture failure. But the opportunities far outweigh the risks. And if you look at this, this is some rolled up beef. That's some frozen beef. I took that picture in China. In China, they love to take this frozen rolled up beef, they bring it out, it looks beautiful, and then they bring a big hot pot of boiling water and they boil it. And I know that's offensive to every rancher in North America, but they boil beef. Well, I'll tell you, in 3 years, we're going to look at a chart. China's become the biggest beef importer on the planet. And we all know the China math. 1.3 billion times anything is a big number, right? So for the beef world, China holds enormous potential. This next picture, you can't see it very good. It's a little skinny Indian kid riding a water buffalo with his herd of buffalo out in the water. That Indian water buffalo herd has now caused India to become the biggest beef exporter in the world. And that's another story for another time, but that's for real. India is the biggest beef exporter in the world, driven by these water buffalo. Now, they don't really compete with Canadian beef anywhere in the world. It's a very low-value product, but it's a major part of the global beef component. Probably can't see that. Those are some frozen beef tongues in Japan. That's one problem with saying you're going to be self-sufficient is we'd have to eat a lot more beef tongue and beef stomach and things that my ratio to beef stomach to ribeye isn't very good, so I'm glad to be able to export some of those things. But beef tongue provides an enormous value. We ship pretty much every beef tongue we cut. Probably 90% of our beef tongues are consumed in Japan today. And they're shipped wholesale at $5 plus per pound. That's a great value. 3.5 pound tongue. When BSE hit, tongues went to under $1. So you figure $4 a pound on a 3.5 pound tongue, there's about 15 bucks a head in value. On feed yard and packing margins, $15 a head is pretty good. That's just from exporting tongues. Can't see that picture very good. I took that picture last week in Seoul. That's a gift box of domestic Korean Hanwoo beef. And if you look at the price tag, it's about an 8-pound gift box, and it's priced at about $600. Now, I don't have a friend that I would buy a $600 platter of beef and give to him, but somebody in Korea must. $600 for that little 8-pound pack of beef as a gift box. Now, that's Korean domestic Hanwoo beef, but it doesn't have to just be. It can be imported beef as well. Then there's also just the complex nature of beef with governments and countries and all that crap that we deal with to try and get trade through and build market access. But back to that beef thing, I showed you the Korean beef. Here's a picture. I wanted to show you. It was a different store, but it was also last week in Seoul. This is some imported Australian Wagyu beef being sold in Korea. It's about $48 a pound. Now, I could find beef. I saw beef in Tokyo that was $150 a pound. But this is some imported beef. You can get imported beef that's bringing $50 a pound. And so these opportunities are enormous. I don't think there's ever been a time in the history of this industry when we have so many opportunities to make money in this business. We have consumers around the world scouring, clamoring, trying to find and get our product. It's a great spot to be in. Here's the driver. We know where prices are. You've all seen these prices just shoot record high. I mean, there's high prices, and then there's really high prices, and then there's the prices we've been seeing the last 2 years. It's been absolutely staggering. Here's why. This is a chart, and you can see these bars. Each bar is a year. That's global meat and broiler production. This first area right here is beef. So that's the level of global production. You can see beef production hasn't increased substantially for almost 9 years now. 8 years of no growth in global beef production. I can look at corn, rice, chicken, cotton, pork. I can look at any commodity back to 1960 in this database. I've never seen a commodity do that. So we just went 8 years with no additional beef. Here's the math behind that. We're adding 78 million people a year to the planet. About 9 New York cities every year to this planet. So in those 8 years when we produced no additional beef, we added 680 million people to the planet with $14 trillion of combined global income increase, GDP increase. So you add that much money and that many people to the world, and we give them no more beef to eat. These prices don't seem so ridiculous now, do they? So that's really what's driving this market. It isn't local. It isn't North America. It's a global Global situation. And as we go forward, this robust demand is going to be chasing a very tight supply. Here's one example of that. This is a forecast by the United Nations. They put out these food and ag forecasts, and they said, here's how much food is going to be needed from 2013 to 2023. And basically, the world's going to need 27 million tons more poultry by 2023, 14 million tons more pork, and 9 million tons more beef. Now, what's most staggering there is you saw what we've done the last 9 years in beef production. This says just to keep pace with global demand, we're going to need 9 million tons more beef by 2023. 2023 is coming pretty fast, and we have produced no additional beef. And so that's why I say, I don't know if we'll go and put new highs in this year. I doubt it, just because of what we're doing with pork and poultry production. But we're in a new and higher trading range. This wasn't a one-year flash in the pan. I mean, gear up for growth. The market is paying you to produce more beef and better beef. Take advantage of that. Look at your operation, find ways to increase in your quality and your quantity. Now this is another chart. This is, all my charts go upwards and to the right. You've noticed that, huh? They all go up and they all go to the right. Everybody likes that. But this is what I would call a long-term chart. Now I don't know how many people lived in 5000 BC, but these were published estimates of world population. Now you look at that, over at the bottom, you probably can't see that, but in the year 1800, we hit 900 million people, almost a billion in 1800. Not very long ago, right? 215 years ago, we hit a billion people. Today, we're at 7 billion. Look at where that line's going. I think this is a chart more about food than it is about people. This is the productive capacity of our planet to produce food. Isn't that staggering? Absolutely incredible. If you could be a farmer or a rancher any time in history, when would be the greatest time on earth to be a farmer or rancher? Today. The last 100 years, the next 100 years. Phenomenal. You're producing a product that has built-in demand growth at rates unprecedented. You're in a fantastic spot in terms of supply and demand. Fantastic. One estimate said more food will be consumed in the next 50 years than was consumed in the last 5,000 years. More food will be needed. Now, some people see this and panic. Some people, the people Bruce was talking about, see this and say, hey, we're all going to die. We're going over a cliff. We can't sustain it. We're all going to die. And there are groups that are just adamantly trying to stop this. Now, I'll tell you, I've done the math. I did a project with a company down the States, a big company, that said, can we make it to 9 billion? Can we make it to 11? We looked at pork, poultry, dairy, and beef. And we looked at production levels, we looked at resources. Absolutely we can make it, no problem. We'll get to 9 billion, we can blow past 11 billion. But the way we do it is with increased efficiency. A lot of the beef in the world isn't produced as efficiently as we produce beef. There are huge opportunities through efficiency growth. Dairy, it's incredible. You know, that 75% of the world's dairy cows in Brazil, or in India and China, 75% of the dairy cows produce about 20% of the milk. We can make that work a lot better, can't we, than that? So there are huge opportunities. We can get there. We're not going off the cliff. We're going to survive. Your grandchildren are going to have plenty of food. But we got to be careful about how we legislate production agriculture. Got to be very careful with that. So global demographics. Global middle class, you can see here, is at 2 billion. It's going to 6 billion, 5 billion, 4.9 billion by 2030. So from 2012 to 2030, the global middle class will expand by 3 billion people. 3 billion. I think this is a tip of the iceberg when it comes to consumer products, food being one. We all share the same long-term addiction to chewing and swallowing, don't we? And so are those 3 billion people. As incomes rise, people move off of rice and beans, they start eating some chicken, they spend it on food. This is a wave that is going to change global agriculture forever. Asia's middle class spent $4.8 billion in 2010. By 2030, they'll be spending over $30 billion a year. The Asian influence cannot be understated. If you look at the global beef imports, I'm going to flip through a few of these, but the main line here, you can see China, Hong Kong. In 3 years, they came out of obscurity and became the biggest beef importer in the world. Beef is the new wave in China. It started in 2012. It's like cell phones or cars or whatever it is. Every restaurant in Beijing wants a little bit of beef on the menu. They only eat about 8 pounds per capita of beef per year. They eat 80 pounds of pork per year. So beef's pretty small, but again, 1.3 billion, right? So huge opportunities there. China manages everything by self-sufficiency when it comes to food. While Japan imports half of their food, China imports 1% of their food. They hold very tightly to these self-sufficiency standards. But look at beef. It's the one dropping, 94, I think it'll be 93% this year. If you read the Chinese government documents on ag policy, read between the lines, I think they're giving up on beef self-sufficiency. They gave up on soybean self-sufficiency about 8 years ago. They went from 90% self-sufficiency to about 20% very quickly. I think they're letting go of beef. They want to retain self-sufficiency in pork, rice, wheat, and corn. Beef's off. So the opportunity is enormous for beef. If you look in terms of just global beef trade, it's a $32 billion business today. In 2009, it was a $16 billion business. The value of global beef flowing around the world in shipping containers doubled. We added $16 billion since 2009. Absolutely incredible. And it all goes to what I was showing you. Global consumers are looking for beef. So what about BC beef in the future? Let's shift gears a little bit here. Marketing class, Marketing 101, we learn what? The customer's always right. We've talked about this. Is the customer always right? Organic, blah, 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 whatever. Well, no. Sometimes the consumer is just dead flat wrong. But doesn't matter because they're the consumer and they have money in their hands, so the customer's always right. Is that right? I'm taking a one-slide detour. I couldn't help but do this. I got tired of hearing this, and so I went and put a chart. And I think it was Bruce said 80% of what we remember is visual. Is that what you said? 80%. And so I said, okay, I'm a numbers guy. I'm going to build charts and try and help people understand this. This is says too many hormones in your beef. This is nanograms of estrogen. And I had to do it on a log scale to fit. So non-implanted beef. I tell people there's no such thing as hormone-free beef. All beef has hormones. Non-implanted beef has 1.6 nanograms, a billionth of a gram of estrogen. Implanted beef has 1.9. So we go from 1.6 to 1.9 billionths of a gram of estrogen change between hormone and non-hormone beef. This is a 3-ounce serving. Potatoes have 225 nanograms. And so you go on up. Cabbage, ice cream, soy oil has, 168,000 nanograms. So the bottom line is the French fries you eat with your hamburger have 200 times the level of estrogen or hormones than your hamburger has. And so I'm not a real social techie, but I put this on Twitter. I sent it out and put it on Twitter. This thing got forwarded 32,000 times within about 2 days. And so I thought, wait a minute, I get this now. I get how this Twitter thing works. I can talk to you 300 people and go, hey, this is stupid, and we all get it. But that was a chance, 32,000 people. Don't underestimate the value of social media. I follow a guy on Twitter. I follow a lot of commodity brokers and meat traders, and so as Twitter, during my day, I see Twitter pop up, and I can see what the markets are doing. But I follow a guy out of Alberta named Stu the farmer. And I do it just because every day he posts some pictures of his farm in Alberta and talks about what he's doing. It's just great. I just think that's awesome. And now, all of us may not want to do that. I probably wouldn't want to do that. But find somebody in your family or your operation that'll do that. Y'all carry a camera on your cell phone. Find somebody that'll click and take a picture of a new calf, put it on Twitter. Talk about what you're doing. There's great value in doing that. Okay, detour back to what I was talking about before. Customer's always right, right? Well, that's a real challenge. Trying to balance that. People are looking for feel-good beef. What feels good? Animal welfare, sustainability, all these things we've talked about. People don't just want food, they want to feel good about what they're eating. And so all these things that I just said, that's a bunch of bull. Whatever. I don't want to hear about it. It makes me angry. I've evolved. I've evolved to the point where I can talk about it and think about it without wanting to throw up, or smoke coming out of my ears. But the reality is, this is not going away. We better get used to this. We have to. Sherry gets this, I know. We have to get used to it. You can hate it. You can say it's non-scientific bullcrap. I don't care. But you got to get used to it because it's not going away. I say you produce whatever makes you the most money. If someone comes and says, hey, I want organic beef, I want beef from cows at whatever, fill in the blank, and it makes you money, go for it. By all means, you bet. But what I mentioned before, we've got to be careful about legislating this stuff. And these activist groups, the angry acronyms, they want to legislate it. They want to say all beef needs to be organic, all beef needs to be free range, whatever it is. And the problem with that is we have billions of people that need food. Now, billions of people need conventionally produced and conventionally priced food. A few million want organic. That's why we got to be careful with this legislation. We got to fight any of this legislation, especially when it relates to what I call yield-reducing practices. Can you adopt an animal welfare standard? Can you adopt a sustainability standard? And my fear is, if not, one's going to be defined for you. The activists are going to come out and we're going to pass legislation that says we've either got to anesthetize before we castrate or ban hot brands or whatever it is. We're going to be doing a lot of things different in the future that we don't want to do. But I think there's an opportunity for any group that can take a progressive stand at this and say, you know what, we're going to take a standard, we're going to build our own standard. And here's what we're going to do. And yeah, there's some things we don't like to do, but here's what we're going to do and get in front of this thing. Because if not, those groups are going to be defining that for you. Most of you are doing 90% of it. If you look at the sustainability efforts, if you look at what it takes, Sherry could come out to your ranch and say, most of this stuff you're already doing. It's just a matter of being willing to accept an audit, which none of us like. There are lots of things in life we don't like. My dad died of colon cancer. I have to go get colonoscopies. I don't like it. I'm willing to do it because it beats the alternative. So there's things we got to do, isn't it? I tell my kids that all the time. There's things in life that you don't want to do that you got to do. And so it's a real opportunity, I think, to get involved with these groups, these sustainable beef production, verified beef production, and say, I'll go through the audit, I'll go through the colonoscopy, whatever you got to do, come look at my ranch, fill out paperwork. And I know you guys laugh because the truth of it is, I know how bad most of you hate sitting in the office and going through paperwork, and I know how bad most of you hate saying, hey, I've got a government guy that wants to come talk to you. And it's basically the equivalent of a colonoscopy. Actually, colonoscopy might be better than that. But this is stuff you're already doing. It's a matter of verifying it. It's a matter of communicating it. Get out in front of this. And like I say, get your kids involved. I know this gives a lot of people heartburn to try and stomach this stuff. Get your kids involved. Get them helping you with this. Get them on social media. Get them calling Sherry and looking at opportunities to verify and track this stuff. So I'll get off that. Overseas opportunities. High quality beef is enormous. Enormous opportunity all over. You guys have traceability. U.S. doesn't. That's an opportunity. Traceability was a buzzword in the late 90s. I tell the U.S. guys this all the time. People talked about traceability. I remember being in Japan in the early 2000s, and they had the cameras where you could scan the beef and see where it came from. Well, no one mandated traceability, but it took Canada, Australia, New Zealand, took you guys about 20 minutes to say, we're going to do this. Nobody mandated it, but you did it. We still don't have it. We still don't have traceability. Every market in the world, pretty much every major beef country can ship beef to China except for two. And those are two countries that don't have traceability, the U.S. and India. It's an advantage that you guys have, traceability. You can market it domestically, internationally. Animal welfare, sustainability standards, all those things are opportunities. Canada, you have less political baggage than we do. We try and negotiate beef access to China. They're talking about U.S. planes flying over the South China Sea. You know, it's just, we have a lot of, it's tough for us to negotiate when we have a lot of broad political issues. You guys have a better opportunity. Target strategic niche opportunities. Small volumes, high customization. I think that's a real opportunity. So, flip over to the ranch side. I know as a producer, you can't do much of that. I can't, you know, I've got 400 calves. I can't go find a market in China. I'm producing calves, and they've got a long trail before they get to China. So here's what we're doing on the ranch. You cannot manage what you do not measure. And here's what I mean. Maybe some of you guys are doing this. I would expect that some of you are, but some of you aren't. Do you know the feedlot performance of your calves? We talked about knowing your customer. And we learned, don't go too far downstream. Don't try and fill the needs of your customer's customer. Isn't that right? But your customer's a feedlot. So how do your calves do in the feedlot? Do you know? Do you know what the average daily gain is on your calves in the feedlot? I didn't when I was ranching. We lived, all of our cattle went 500 miles to a feedlot, probably similar to up here. I put them on a truck and I started working on the next crop, you know. But find out average daily gain, conversion, death loss. Track it down. Go find the feedlot. Find out where they went. What about carcass grades? Do you know how your cattle grade in the plant? You should, because you're buying bulls. If not, follow the trail. Find the feeder who bought your calves last year, call him and say, hey, I sent those calves out, how did they do? Against your average, were they above, were they below? Ask them, say, what are the best cattle that you feed in your feedlot? What are the best cattle? How do they perform? Average daily gain, death loss, carcass, whatever. Track those numbers down and start to manage them. Build them into your production system. The market's paying you. You have a huge opportunity here. The market is paying a lot of money into this industry to produce more and better beef. Take advantage of that. Invest and say, I'm going to figure out how to produce better cattle, better beef for my customers. I think it's an enormous opportunity. It's easier to do this when prices are high than to do it when prices are low, right? All right, so just to wrap it up here, strong global demand is chasing a tight supply. That's not going away. We're going to see that play out, I think, for at least the next 10 years. We're going to have very well globally supported beef prices. Global demand's growing, 9 million tons of beef needed by 2023. Record high prices may be in, but we are in a new and higher trading range. We're not going back to these dollar calves. The last calves I sold in '99, I sold for 92 cents. And it wasn't a wreck, it wasn't a great year, but those same calves last year sold for $3 a pound. But I think we're going to be in that $2 to $3 range fairly consistently here for a while. You cannot manage what you don't monitor. Find out the variables that you can increase and step up your quality in your production. Upgrade your cattle and beef and invest in quality.